the day Martin let his new secretary sit in the passenger seat beside him. A flood of bullet comments suddenly appeared before my eyes. Finally, the female lead is here. When is this vicious side character getting written off? She's so annoying. I just want to watch the cold, abstinent CEO fall sweetly in love with the female lead. Old hag, get lost already. I pretended not to see them. Instead, I generously allowed Martin to settle the girl into our villa, pay for her grandmother's treatment, and take care of every problem in her life. What nobody knew was that I was pregnant. Men were never necessities, compared to losing my mind over some female lead, causing trouble for her nonstop, and eventually being burned alive. Wasn't keeping the child while ditching the father far more appealing? At least then I'd have a legal heir carrying my surname. Chapter 1. Martin never told me he had replaced his CEO secretary. That day, he drove over to pick me up. The passenger side window slowly rolled down. Miss Elisa, I'm CEO Law's new secretary. The girl curled her rosy lips into a sweet smile. There wasn't the slightest trace of nervousness or etiquette one would normally show towards someone of higher status. When it became obvious she had no intention of giving up the seat, Martin Law finally spoke. Elisa, Brenda gets carsick. Sit in the back. That had never happened before. Martin was someone who cared deeply about boundaries. Although our 3-year marriage had been arranged for the greater interests of our families, we were never one of those couples who only looked harmonious on the surface. Every night, Martin held me as he slept, carefully counting how much money had been added to my personal fortune that day. He had once patted his chest and promised me that he would never embarrass me in any situation. But for Brenda, he broke that rule for the very first time. Chapter 2. I was not some gentle-tempered rich heiress. The moment dissatisfaction first appeared, rules should have been established immediately. But before I could even turn cold, another wall of bullet comments appeared before my eyes. Here comes the drama. The vicious side character is about to scream at the female lead until she cries and shamefully crawls into the back seat. It's just a passenger seat. Can't she give it up to someone with motion sickness? They chirped noisily as they discussed the plot. Only then did I realize the world we lived in was actually a CEO romance novel. The male lead, Martin, was cold, restrained, and impossible to tempt. The female lead was Brenda. She grew up in a remote mountain village and had once received Martin's financial support to stand by his side. She had endured unimaginable hardship. She was resilient, bright, and endlessly optimistic, earning special attention from the male lead and plenty of help in the workplace. But because Martin was already married, Brenda, who had secretly loved him for years, could only bury those feelings deep inside her heart. To outsiders, marriages between wealthy families were nothing more than business alliances without any real love. As the wife occupying the official title, I supposedly made life difficult for the female lead from the very first moment we met, kicking her while she was down and pushing her toward despair. Yet instead of hurting the female lead, every one of my actions only brought her closer to the male lead. I would continue acting like a lunatic until Martin grew disgusted with me and demanded a divorce. Then, blaming everything on the female lead, I would hire people to corner her inside a warehouse. Unexpectedly, a fire would break out on the scene. Martin would rescue her without hesitation and leave me behind to burn alive. After getting rid of the vicious side character, the male and female leads would begin their passionate office romance, fooling around everywhere and leaving traces all over the place while the bullet comments screamed in excitement. To avenge the female lead, the male lead would even snatch away my family's resources and build an empire for her 3 sons. Meanwhile, my poor parents, already advanced in age, would end up surviving by running a tiny street food stall. How infuriating. That was not my style at all. Could a man possibly matter more than my family? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Chapter 3. I opened the rear car door and sat down, leaning close beside Martin. Brenda spoke in a sweet, delicate voice. CEO Law, didn't you say you liked the lean pork congee I make? I'll bring you some tomorrow. The provocation in her tone was obvious, but Martin didn't think deeply about it and instinctively replied, okay. I couldn't help letting out a cold snort. No wonder he had told the housekeeper a week ago to stop preparing breakfast. I had a habit of staying up late. Martin always said it was bad for my health. He insisted on sleeping beside me, jogging with me in the mornings, and personally supervising my breakfast. At first, I found it irritating to have someone controlling me all the time, but he would wrap his arms around me possessively and say he wanted us to stay husband and wife for a lifetime. I wasn't allowed to ruin my health, and I wasn't allowed to fall behind him. Otherwise, even if he had to carry me himself, he would drag me to the finish line. Habits were dangerous things. Attachment was too. Once you caught it, it was painfully hard to quit. Chapter 4. Martin was highly perceptive. When he noticed my unpleasant expression through the rearview mirror, he immediately explained, "Work's been busy lately. I was afraid of waking you up, so I didn't call you to get up." Brenda added, "CEO Law comes to the office super early every morning so he can personally teach me more things. But I'm so dumb. Sometimes he has to explain the same question over and over before I understand." Unconsciously, Martin glanced at her. There was a gentleness in his eyes that even he himself hadn't noticed. But I remembered that Martin Law's previous secretary had graduated from an Ivy League school, spoke 4 languages fluently, and possessed exceptional knowledge and adaptability. Yet even someone like that would get scolded mercilessly for the slightest mistake. Comparison truly was the thief of peace. Perhaps my expression had become too indifferent. Martin realized I was angry. He pulled the car over to the side of the road and told Brenda to get out. "Take a taxi home yourself." Then, ignoring my objection, he pulled me back into the passenger seat and personally fastened my seatbelt. Brenda stood alone on the rainy street, looking utterly miserable, like a pitiful puppy that had just been abandoned. The bullet comments exploded. Male lead. "Don't do this. What if the female lead runs into danger taking a taxi alone?" It's all the side character's fault for constantly giving attitude and ruining the romantic tension we're here to watch. There were opposing opinions too. "I seriously don't understand. The male lead isn't even divorced yet. Are you all rooting for the mistress to replace the wife already? What do you know? Political marriages never have real love. The unloved one is the real outsider." Chapter 5. I finally understood. The bullet comments were split into 2 groups. One side only cared about the plot and wanted to watch the main couple flirt sweetly. The other side cared about morality, but still hoped I would stay rational and not let things spiral into disaster. In the kitchen, Martin personally prepared bird's nest soup for me. My emotions were complicated. To be fair, before Brenda appeared, he had been the perfect husband. Handsome, gentle, capable. He willingly gave favorable terms to projects from my family, discussed everything with me calmly, and we were perfectly compatible in bed as well. Compared to the wealthy couples in our circle who each fooled around separately despite their arranged marriages, we were far better than most. My mother always said I had struck gold marrying a man who truly knew how to care for his wife. He lifted a spoonful of sweet bird's nest soup to my lips. "Honey, seeing you get jealous today actually made me a little happy." Sitting behind me, he wrapped me into his arms the same way he always did. But this time, I moved away, avoiding his intimate touch. Martin froze for a moment. "Honey, what's wrong?" This was the first time I had ever rejected his affection. "Nothing. I'm tired. I'm sorry. I forgot for a moment that you hate other people sitting in my passenger seat the most. It won't happen again." Martin had always kept himself clean and disciplined, never paying attention to women who threw themselves at him. In the past, he even complained that I trusted him too much and voluntarily handed over his phone for me to inspect. But now, his explanation only sounded like a guilty cover-up. "She and I are just employer and employee. There's nothing else between us." A sharp ache spread through my chest. As unwilling as I was to admit it, I had fallen in love with Martin. But according to the bullet comments, I was not his true love. Every single one of them was waiting eagerly to see me lose my mind. Why should I? Chapter 6. Late into the night, I pretended to be asleep. Then I heard Martin lowering his voice as he answered a phone call. Brenda's voice came through, trembling with tears. "CEO Law, I still haven't made it home. There are bad guys following me on the street." I was speechless. Brenda rented a tiny apartment in North City. Walking there from here would take over 20 kilometers. Why couldn't she just take a taxi? I didn't know what she said afterward, but Martin's voice suddenly turned tense. "Don't be scared. I'm coming to get you right now." He grabbed his coat and rushed toward the garage. I didn't get up. According to the bullet comments, in the original plot, I became furious at being woken up in the middle of the night and stopped the male lead from leaving. As a result, The female lead would be dragged away by a group of drunken thugs. It would nearly end in tragedy. Martin would drown in guilt and place all the blame on me. Then he would buy the rose-shaped brooch I had wanted at an outrageously high auction price and give it to Brenda as compensation. The stress and anger would even cause me to lose the baby in my stomach. Chapter 7. After finally getting a full night's sleep, I decided to go to the hospital. After a series of examinations, the doctor smiled and said, "Congratulations, Mrs. Law, you're pregnant. Would you like us to notify CEO Law?" For a moment, I forgot. Out of habit, I had come to a hospital owned by the Law family. "There's no need. Please make sure to keep it confidential for me." The doctor assumed I wanted to surprise Martin and agreed with a smile. I felt a little lost. Martin had been looking forward to having a child for a long time, but my unhealthy schedule and weak body had made pregnancy difficult before. He had personally supervised my health and diet for more than 2 years before finally feeling comfortable enough for us to stop using protection. Still in a daze, I unexpectedly ran into Martin and Brenda. They appeared together inside a hospital room, where Brenda's grandmother lay resting in bed. The bullet comments appeared again. "Grandma's always been so good to the female lead." Male lead. "Since you already paid the medical bills, make sure you invite the world-class specialists too." Don't worry, the male lead was raised by his own grandmother, so he naturally cares about the people she cares about. Chapter 8. Brenda's grandmother slowly opened her eyes and placed her granddaughter's hand into Martin's. "You're Brenda's boyfriend, aren't you? My granddaughter likes you so much. She even keeps your photo beside her bed." "Grandma." Brenda's face immediately flushed with embarrassment. Martin looked like he wanted to explain, but when he saw the pleading expression in Brenda's eyes, he pressed his lips together and said nothing at all. The bullet comments erupted like it was a holiday celebration. "We're getting romance crumbs." Male lead. "You finally noticed the female lead's feelings. The way they're avoiding eye contact is so obvious. Even grandma's blurry eyesight could tell. Are you people insane? The male lead is literally married. If you don't like it, leave." Novel fans are only here to ship this couple. Strangely enough, whenever I wasn't physically in the same scene as the male and female leads, the bullet comments seemed unable to notice my existence. When Martin stepped out of the hospital room, I quietly retreated behind a corner. Brenda tugged gently on the sleeve of his custom-made suit as tears streamed down her face. "CEO Law, thank you for saving me last night and bringing my grandmother to the hospital. Stop crying. I'll buy you a car in the future so you won't feel bad about spending money on taxis anymore." Deeply moved, she buried herself in Martin's arms while he held her and softly comforted her again and again. If I weren't the victim being cheated on, I probably could have joined everyone else in shipping them. I took a deep breath. Then I walked a short distance away and called Martin's phone. He lowered his head and whispered something to Brenda before finally answering. "Honey, I had to go back to the company last night for overtime work. Are you awake yet? I'll tell the housekeeper to prepare breakfast for you." I gently touched my flat stomach and spoke softly. "Martin, turn around. I'm right behind you." Chapter 9. In that instant, Martin's tall and composed figure seemed to freeze into solid ice. Even through the distance, I could feel his body stiffen. The bullet comments exploded the moment they heard my voice on the phone. "Damn, why is the vicious side character here? Please don't let her appear in front of Grandma and upset the old lady. Switch the camera to the side character already. I want to see how she's about to throw a fit and how the male lead protects the female lead." They kept calling me the vicious side character, as though I had truly committed unforgivable crimes. Martin slowly turned around, his voice trembling as if terrified I had heard him silently accepting the role of Brenda's boyfriend moments earlier. "Elisa, but he didn't see me." The bullet comments sighed in relief. "I knew it. There's no way the vicious side character would actually show up here. This is the first time the future grandson-in-law makes a good impression in front of the female lead's grandma. Thanks to Grandma helping push things along, we get all the sweet romance later. The side character's such a liar. She almost fooled the male lead and us too. There were still people opposing them. What's wrong with you people? You're just as disgusting as the male and female leads. The male lead has a wife, so why doesn't he clarify things? Emotional cheating is still cheating. Mindless shippers. They attack the wife unconditionally just so they can fantasize about the couple. Up to this point, I haven't seen the wife actually hurt the female lead once. Meanwhile, the female lead acts like such a pretentious coquette. If you were the wife, Could you tolerate it? That actually comforted me a little. At least some viewers still had functioning brains instead of blindly taking one side. Using the building's angle to hide myself in the shadows, I quietly watched Martin. Did you do something guilty? Why do you sound so nervous? The fist he had tightly clenched slowly loosened. Of course not. I was just afraid you'd worry if you woke up and didn't see me at home. I deliberately teased him. Gone so early in the morning. Don't tell me you rushed off to the office just to eat the lean pork congee your little secretary made for you? Elisa, don't misunderstand. I made plans to play golf with Taylor. You're not allowed to lie to me. Otherwise, I'll call Taylor myself to confirm. I'm not lying. If you don't believe me, call him later. All right already. Since when have I ever doubted you? Hurry and go do your work. Remember to eat breakfast. If you starve yourself, I'll feel heartbroken. Men's mouths were truly built for lies. That saying had never felt more accurate than it did in this moment. After hanging up, I watched Martin immediately dial another number. Taylor was his best friend. Covering for him would be effortless. But once someone told the first lie, they would need countless more lies to cover it up afterward. Chapter 10. I stayed home the entire day, thinking about whether I should keep the baby. My gaze landed on the wedding photo hanging in the living room, and memories came rushing back. 3.5 years ago, Martin and I met for the very first time. He was young and exceptionally accomplished, having taken over the company right after graduation and becoming the unquestioned man in charge. My family was extremely well off. My parents had never once considered using my marriage as a tool for profit or binding our family to another through sacrifice. Before I met him, my mother had said very clearly, "My daughter, if you like him, spend more time together. If you don't, there'll always be a better one next. Our family is wealthy enough already. We don't need our daughter sacrificing her happiness for a political marriage." Unexpectedly, Martin and I clicked immediately. We both had overseas study backgrounds, shared the same aesthetics and interests, and when discussing classic films we'd watched, we could seamlessly switch between German and English. I admired his elegance and capability. He liked my lively personality and broad knowledge. On the surface, I looked like some pampered rich girl wasting away at home every day. But Martin knew that when it came to investments, my instincts were razor sharp. His family had originally worked in traditional industries. Under my suggestions, they caught the wave of capital investment and the internet boom, dragging their aging family business to entirely new heights. Martin always praised me. My Elisa usually lounges around like a lazy cat. But the moment she spots an opportunity, that little brain of hers works faster than anyone else's. Of course, his tolerance and pampering toward me weren't solely because of my value. Adult relationships were always built partly on weighing pros and cons, but the extra tenderness and affection beyond that were the true icing on the cake. He enjoyed spoiling me, and I accepted his love. But life never went according to plan. In the end, we were merely characters written by an author. The thought that I would supposedly use my intelligence and investment skills just to tear apart a destined couple, only to ruin my own life in the process. It made me curl my lips into a mocking smile. A smart investor would never throw away all their capital just because of sunk costs. I gently touched my flat stomach, my thoughts finally becoming clear. 3 years in exchange for an heir with excellent genes. That actually sounded like a rather worthwhile investment. Chapter 11. By the time Martin returned that night, I was already lying in bed. "Honey, going to bed this early? My head feels a little dizzy. Do you have a fever?" Nervously, he pressed his hand against my forehead. Only after confirming my temperature was normal did he relax. "You must have kicked off your blanket again because I wasn't home last night." Martin leaned over, intending to pull me into his arms like he always did. But as I breathed in, I caught the lingering scent of hospital disinfectant on him. Clearly, he had spent the entire day running around for Brenda's grandmother. The smell made me nauseous. I shoved him away forcefully, his face filled with shock. "Honey, what's wrong? Where did you go? You smell awful." "Sorry." Taylor twisted his ankle while playing golf today, so I took him to the hospital. "I'll visit him tomorrow." "Don't go. Hospitals are full of germs. Your health is weak, and getting sick would be bad." "It's okay. My dad brought back some ointment from overseas last time. It works especially well. I'll bring it for you." I didn't continue pressing him. Martin handled things flawlessly. As long as I never showed up personally, Taylor would probably have no choice but to fake a hospital admission too. Once a lie started rolling, it became a snowball. And someday, that snowball would inevitably become the final weight that collapsed the entire house. Chapter 12. The next morning, Martin accompanied me through breakfast before leaving. "Honey, I'm bringing your ointment with me. Taylor's definitely going to be touched to death. Go ahead." The moment the door closed, the smile disappeared from my face. Looks like he'd be spending another entire day at the hospital. Then my mother called. "Sweetheart, is Martin's friend's grandmother seriously ill?" He personally called me and asked if I could invite Dr. Wilson from overseas to perform the surgery. Dr. Wilson was my mother's friend and one of the world's leading medical specialists. For Brenda's grandmother, Martin was even willing to use my family's resources. The image of that old woman placing Brenda's hand together with Martin's while smiling warmly and telling them to live happily together flashed through my mind again. My blood surged instantly with anger. According to the bullet comments, I was supposedly narrow-minded and petty. They said I intentionally stopped Martin from bringing in the best doctor just to make things difficult for the female lead, nearly causing Brenda's grandmother's death. I replied calmly, "Mom, let Dr. Wilson decide for himself. If he has time, then he can come. If not, don't force him. Won't that delay Martin's plans? I can charter a private flight to bring him over." That was what parents were like. Just so their daughter could have an easier life in her husband's family, they would exhaust every effort to fulfill their son-in-law's wishes. Thinking about how, later in the plot, Martin would completely forget all the kindness my parents had shown him and destroy my family for the sake of the female lead, I suddenly couldn't hold back my tears anymore. "Silly girl, why are you crying? Mom, are you home? I want to come back for a visit." Rome wasn't built in a day, and a towering skyscraper could never collapse overnight either. My family's foundation was deep and solid. How could Martin possibly uproot us so easily? Something inside must have broken first. Chapter 13. I placed the pregnancy report in front of my mother. She was overjoyed. "My daughter is going to become a mother too. Does Martin know yet?" "Mom, there's something serious I need to tell you." I roughly explained the emotional entanglement between Martin and Brenda. Using the excuse of a dream, I told her about our family's future ending. My mother didn't think my dream sounded absurd at all. Instead, she became furious. Martin actually pretended to be that little White Lotus's boyfriend for an outsider, and he still had the nerve to ask me to use my connections to find him a doctor? "Don't worry, Dr. Wilson isn't someone you can just casually invite. Bringing him over already requires exhausting amounts of my influence and money. If our own family needs him next time, we might not even be able to get him anymore. If Martin is so capable, then let him find someone himself." Thinking about the accusations in the bullet comments, I quietly asked, "Mom, do you think I'm vicious? Using my own selfishness to stop a famous doctor from treating Brenda's grandmother? Humph. If I weren't investing tens of millions every year into Dr. Wilson's medical laboratory, do you think he'd abandon important work and fly halfway across the world for this? It's simply a matter of resources and capability. Who has the right to criticize?" That was true. If Martin weren't paying for it, Brenda's grandmother wouldn't even be able to afford the medical fees. In the law of the jungle, where isn't it survival of the fittest? Only the strong have the right to enjoy the best resources. That was the cruel reality. I leaned against my mother's arms and asked softly, "If I decide to give birth to this child alone, can you and Dad accept it?" "Why wouldn't we?" "Back then, I already told your father that if he ever dared to entertain crooked thoughts, I'd immediately keep the child and ditch the man. After all these years, there hasn't even been a single female fly buzzing around him. How wonderful. No matter what happened, my parents would always be my strongest support." Chapter 14. When I returned home, I ran into Brenda helping Martin back inside. "Miss Elisa, could you please open the door? CEO Law drank a little too much. I need to help him back to bed." Martin's footsteps were unsteady. His tie loosened carelessly. Wine stains splattered across his sleeves. He had clearly drunk a lot. Back when his previous secretary worked for him, when had he ever looked this miserable after being pressured into drinking at business dinners? Why is Martin this drunk? Was the client difficult to deal with? No, CEO Law saw that I couldn't drink and didn't want the clients making things hard for me, so he protected me and drank on my behalf. Brenda wrapped an arm around Martin's waist, allowing his arm to rest naturally over her slender shoulders. Her explanation sounded affectionate and sincere. I stared at her coldly. The bullet comments nearly exploded from excitement. The female lead is amazing. She's finally standing up directly against the vicious side character. The male lead protecting her at the dinner table is so romantic. Fight already. Best case scenario. The male lead feels sorry for the female lead and completely falls out with the vicious side character. Some people spoke up for me too. Was this original novel written by a mistress or something? The male lead isn't even divorced yet, and he's already favoring the female lead this openly. It's disgusting. This story's values are completely twisted. Instant drop. That comforted me a little. At the same time, I understood something very clearly. The reason protagonists became protagonists was because the author deliberately arranged the story around them, granting them plot armor and the audience's affection. But that did not mean every male lead and female lead stood on the side of morality and justice. Ever since I was young, I had followed my parents in doing charity work, donating money to children in mountain villages, and establishing scholarship funds. No matter how anyone looked at it, there was nothing vicious about me. And yet, just to push forward the romance between the male and female leads, I was forced to lose all intelligence and become nothing more than a stepping stone. No, I had my own pride. I was never meant to become someone else's tool. Even if I had to fight against fate itself, I would overturn the destiny of my entire family. Chapter 15. I didn't let Brenda enter the house. Instead, I called the housekeeper over and had Martin dumped into the guest room. She left looking deeply wronged, turning back every few steps, as though she were afraid I might mistreat Martin. To be fair, I truly didn't bother changing Martin's dirty clothes, nor did I prepare a warm towel to wipe his face like I usually would. Lying on the bed, Martin mumbled incoherently while calling my name. Elisa. I'm thirsty. Why aren't you bringing me water? I suddenly remembered Brenda's careful reminder before leaving. Miss Elisa, remember to make CEO Law a cup of honey water. Last time I brought him a jar of wild honey from my hometown. It's in the third cabinet on the left side of your kitchen. So she had been here before while I wasn't around. My anger instantly flared. I stuffed a smelly sock directly into Martin's mouth. A cheating man should at least look the part. The next morning, Martin woke up and noticed a cup of honey water placed on the dining table. He happily drank it. Elisa, you prepared this for me? It tastes amazing. My expression remained indifferent. No, Brenda repeatedly reminded me that I absolutely had to make you drink it. Martin's expression changed immediately as he hurried to explain. She felt a little dizzy during last night's business dinner, so I helped block some drinks for her. Whatever, the one ruining his body is you, not me. He tried to wrap his arms around me. I'm sorry. I know you hate it most when I abuse my health. It won't happen again. I shoved him away without hesitation. Chapter 16. Before our marriage, I had seen Martin's medical reports before. I had genuinely felt heartbroken for him. Back when he was still inexperienced and newly entering the business world, he drank endlessly at banquets just to shoulder his family's responsibilities. I carefully helped nurse his body back to health, suggested he hire professional secretaries to help block drinks for him, and slowly restored his condition bit by bit, just as he had once cared for me. But now, it seemed neither of us needed the other anymore. Martin panicked. Did Secretary Brenda say something that made you uncomfortable? I'll warn her afterward. All right? See? Men always knew exactly what bothered you, yet they still insisted on testing boundaries over and over again, just to see where your limit was. I waved my hand dismissively. No need. Otherwise, you'll just end up thinking I'm harsh and deliberately making life difficult for a little girl. I can't carry that kind of accusation. I never blamed you. You may not say it aloud, but every single thing you've done has been stomping all over my boundaries. From breakfast, to the passenger seat, to Taylor pretending to be hospitalized for you, to secretly going behind my back to ask my mother for help. I refuse to believe you can't see that Brenda likes you, but you still chose to indulge her feelings instead of stopping them. Martin's pupils contracted violently. You know about Brenda's grandmother? I also know that you've been acting as her boyfriend while paying for everything and helping her. It's not what you think. Panic finally spread across Martin's face. He looked completely flustered, and even his voice changed. I just pity her for only having her grandmother to rely on. You know, I was raised by my grandmother too. There are countless pitiful people in this world. Why don't I see you building free hospitals for them? I no longer had the patience to argue with him. Throwing out that final sentence, I turned around and walked away. Chapter 17. Martin wanted to chase after me, but then his phone rang. Brenda's tearful voice came through. CEO Law. Grandma's condition has gotten worse. When exactly is Dr. Wilson arriving? How can he have no sense of urgency at all? Doesn't he know Grandma is suffering every single day? Wait a little longer. I'll make arrangements right away. He grabbed my arm. Elisa, was it you? Did you ask my mother-in-law to stop Dr. Wilson from coming? All it took was one phone call from Brenda for the guilt in Martin's eyes to turn into accusation. My mother didn't stop him. She just didn't actively throw money around to invite him over. Besides, she already gave you his private contact information. If you can't get him to come, what does that have to do with my family? Elisa, that's a human life. How can you be so heartless? Martin shoved me hard. I fell to the floor. A faint pain spread through my lower abdomen, and my face instantly turned pale. Martin, don't go. My stomach hurts. Stay home and reflect on yourself properly. Hearing the commotion, the housekeeper hurriedly called emergency services. The doctor said I was showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. Only after a frantic round of emergency treatment did my condition finally stabilize. My parents arrived very quickly. Sweetheart, what happened? Martin thought I was the one stopping Dr. Wilson from coming, so he pushed me down. My father was even more furious than my mother. He rolled up his sleeves, looking as if he was about to go fight Martin on the spot. That brat! Does Martin not know you're pregnant with his child? I'm not planning to tell him. Then keep it from him. He dared lay a hand on my daughter. A son-in-law like that isn't worth keeping. I asked weakly, did you find any problems at the company? My mother fed me a sip of water. Thankfully, you reminded us. Your uncle really was hiding selfish motives. He has been secretly dealing with our competitors and caused us to lose a huge order. My father was good in every way, except that he was too easily swayed. He lowered his head in shame. Honey, I should have listened to you earlier. From now on, I will never again appoint people just because they are relatives. Sweetheart, once the baby is born, I'll give you shares as a full-month celebration gift. I finally breathed a sigh of relief. A 1,000-mile dam could collapse because of a single ant hole. This time, I would never allow the empire my parents had worked so hard to build to fall into someone else's hands for nothing. Chapter 18. Martin did not go to the office, nor did he come home. He was busy finding other doctors for Brenda's grandmother, and busy comforting the female lead, who had cried herself into a pitiful mess. He did not even know I had been hospitalized. I found out from a newly hired nurse. There's an old lady in the oncology department who's so lucky. Her future grandson-in-law brought Dr. Harlan over by private jet, and the surgery went very smoothly. It must be wonderful to be his girlfriend. She gets 5-star hotel takeout every day and stays in a VIP ward. I heard he even cleared out the entire floor so the old lady could recover in peace. Actually, I had already guessed from the bullet comments that the old lady was an important character used to push the relationship between the male and female leads forward. Whether Dr. Wilson came or not, nothing would really happen to her. On the day I was discharged, I ran into Brenda. When she saw me, a provocative smile appeared on her face. Miss Elisa, I'm so sorry. Martin has been staying at the hospital with Grandma and me recently, so he hasn't had time to go home and see you. I had already sent someone to Brenda's school to investigate her background. She claimed she came from a poor family. Her father had died young, and she had depended on her grandmother ever since. Their life had been difficult. Her biological mother, in order to escape that miserable life, had run off with another man. Without Martin's sponsorship, Brenda would not even have been able to afford school. I laughed softly. That's all right. I heard your mother loves stealing other women's husbands. Maybe the daughter takes after the mother. It must run in the family. The color instantly drained from Brenda's face. At some point, Martin appeared. He gripped my wrist hard, his voice filled with anger. Elisa, Brenda almost lost the last family member she had. She's heartbroken right now. You have loving parents. a wealthy family, and you've had a smooth life since childhood. But that is not a reason for you to humiliate a pitiful girl. I slapped him across the face. You have no right to speak to me like that. You hit me? You actually had the heart to hit me? Martin seemed unable to believe it. After neglecting me for so many days, what he received was not my longing or guilt, but a slap. I took a step back and threw a stack of photos at him. There were photos of Martin accompanying Brenda as they comforted her grandmother together in the hospital room. There were photos of Martin personally receiving Dr. Harlan from the helicopter and bringing him to the grandmother and granddaughter. There was also a photo of Martin lying in the VIP ward while Brenda gently kissed his forehead. He picked them up. He panicked. He hurried to explain. I did not want to listen. I simply left him with one sentence. Martin, let's get divorced. A flash of wild joy crossed Brenda's eyes. The bullet comments erupted as if it were New Year's. What's going on? The vicious side character is actually willing to let go? She must have deliberately stopped Dr. Wilson from treating Grandma. Luckily, the male lead brought in Dr. Harlan. The side character must be furious. Some people could no longer stand it. Are you people seriously letting looks override your morals? The male lead is getting involved with the female lead while still married. And you're actually cheering? And those saying the side character stopped Dr. Wilson. Why don't you mention that the male lead simply wasn't capable enough to invite such an important doctor himself? I'm a medical student. Based on the medical records, the female lead's grandmother doesn't have an incurable disease at all. Doctors in the country could have treated her too. Wasn't this whole performance just to dump the blame onto the wife? So that was how it was. Chapter 19. Martin refused to sign the divorce papers no matter what. Elisa, I admit I care about Brenda a little, but nothing has happened between us. So as long as you didn't sleep with her, that means you upheld your moral standards as a man? He held me tightly in his arms, refusing to let go, forcing me to listen to his heartfelt explanation. In his eyes, Brenda was just a girl from a remote mountain village, someone with a tragic background who had constantly been bullied. But despite everything, she had never given up on pursuing her dreams. After receiving financial support, she never once hid her admiration for Martin. To get closer to him, she worked desperately hard to enter a university in the same city where he lived. The first time they met, Brenda had carried a huge woven sack into the Law family villa. Inside were peanuts, corn, and pumpkins grown by her grandmother. Her hair was dry and yellowish, her body thin and frail, but her eyes shone as brightly as stars. Grandma is very grateful to you for giving me the chance to leave the mountains. Martin Law had not thought much of it at the time. In their social circle, charity work was done partly to help people and partly to build a good reputation. Brenda had merely been one random girl he sponsored. If not her, it could just as easily have been A, B, C, or D. He instructed the housekeeper to put the gifts away, reminded her to study hard, then got into his Bentley and rushed off overseas for a business meeting. Brenda never became discouraged. Throughout university, she closely followed every development involving the Law Corporation. When she saw that the woman Martin married was me, a wife perfectly matched to him in status and background, she realized that a skinny, plain-looking girl like her would never catch his eye. So she continuously worked part-time jobs while striving to become the best version of herself. The moment she graduated, she eagerly applied to join the company. At first, Martin did not recognize her at all. Not until Brenda took out a thick stack of newspapers and magazines containing stories about how she escaped the mountains and earned admission into a prestigious university. Every article mentioned that Martin had been her benefactor, her guiding light, her morning star. In my heart, the morning star is the first star that appears in the darkness. It symbolizes dawn. Martin could not help viewing Brenda differently after that. The helplessness on his face gradually faded. Elisa, I just think she's pitiful. There's really nothing between us. If you truly can't feel at ease, I'll fire her immediately. I won't have any further contact with her. Chapter 20. To prove his loyalty, Martin fired Brenda in front of me through the HR department and bought me countless gifts as an apology. He also invested heavily in appeasing my parents, transferring business contracts worth hundreds of millions to my family without any conditions attached. My father hesitated. Sweetheart, should we delay the divorce for another month or two? Your uncle already caused us huge losses, and raising a child is expensive. At the very least, We should make Martin cough up enough compensation first. Besides, there's no concrete evidence that he physically cheated. If this goes to court, the judge might not even approve the divorce. If my daughter wants a divorce, then she'll get one immediately. Not one extra second needs to be wasted. My mother spoke firmly, leaving my father too intimidated to say another word. As I touched the baby I had nearly lost, countless thoughts ran through my mind. Martin had wanted this child for a very long time. If he found out I was pregnant, he probably would never let me go so easily. Besides, he was the male lead of this world. In the original story, Martin and I never successfully divorced before I was burned alive. So how exactly was I supposed to break free from this deadlock? Just as I was hesitating, Grandma Law called. "Elisa, come back to the old family house tonight with Martin for dinner. I told the housekeeper to make your favorite braised pork ribs." Grandma Law liked me very much. She constantly stuffed boxes of the Law family heirlooms into my arms. She often reminded her grandson that only by treating his wife well could the family maintain proper values and traditions. However, ever since the beginning of the year, her health had started declining. Not wanting us to worry, Grandma voluntarily moved into a high-end nursing facility equipped with an excellent medical team. Chapter 21. The moment I got into the car, I closed my eyes to rest. Martin tried several times to curry favor with me, but every attempt was rejected. "Elisa, Grandma's health isn't good. Let's not upset her, all right?" So that was it. He was afraid I would bring up Brenda and was giving me a warning in advance. "Martin, you know I'm not someone who enjoys tattling. If Grandma finds out anything, then it simply means she still sees and hears very clearly." When we arrived at the old family estate, I brushed away the hand Martin extended toward me and replaced my expression with a graceful smile. "Grandma, how have you been feeling lately?" "Elisa, as long as you're here, I'm happy." In just this short period of time, Grandma Law had grown visibly thinner again. "Don't look so upset. It's said that old age is healthier when you stay lean. I haven't skipped a single dose of the supplements you gave me." Martin stared at me in surprise. Recently, he had been busy taking care of Brenda and her grandmother. Not only did he have no idea I had nearly miscarried, he had even forgotten to come home and visit his own grandmother. At the dinner table, I carefully removed the fish bones for Grandma Law. She looked deeply pleased, her gaze lingering meaningfully on my stomach. Could she have noticed something already? At that moment, the butler hurried over. "Old madam, there's an elderly woman outside claiming that the young master is her benefactor. She specifically came to pay a visit." Chapter 22. Brenda and her grandmother walked inside. The old woman acted completely familiar. "Oh my, future in-law, I heard your health hasn't been good, so I brought my granddaughter to visit you." The entire room fell silent. Martin nearly lost control of his expression. "Why are you here? Future grandson-in-law, why haven't you come to see me recently?" Brenda has been staying home every day feeling miserable. The girl awkwardly tugged at her grandmother while secretly shooting Martin desperate looks. I already knew the reason. The old woman had heart problems and could not handle emotional shock. After she mistakenly believed Martin was her granddaughter's boyfriend, Brenda begged Martin not to expose the truth. Softening for a moment, he agreed, but lies were like snowballs. Once the first lie began, it would only keep growing larger and larger. The bullet comments exploded with excitement unlike ever before. Why is this scene happening ahead of schedule? I remember Martin's grandmother really loved the vicious side character. She was even willing to use family punishment against her grandson for Elisa's sake. You can't blame the grandma and granddaughter for showing up. The vicious side character got the female lead fired. And now the female lead has nowhere to live and no money. She had no choice but to kneel and beg the male lead. Feeling soft-hearted, he arranged for her to stay in a villa in the suburbs. Brenda's grandmother thought the marriage was practically confirmed, so of course she rushed over to visit the future in-laws. There were still opposing voices. "I seriously can't watch this anymore. Male lead, please stop using kindness as an excuse to carry on an emotional affair behind your wife's back. Forget the vicious side character. If my husband secretly kept another woman in a villa behind my back, I'd stab him first and ask questions later." Grandma Law had lost her husband early in life and fought her way through the business world alone for decades. She saw through the grandmother and granddaughter's tricks immediately. "Martin, if you have no intention of using your brain, you might as well donate it to someone who needs one. Your wedding with Elisa was known throughout the entire city. I refuse to believe these two knew absolutely nothing about it. The bullet comments suddenly seemed to wake up. That's true. When Brenda's grandmother got sick, she stayed at a hospital owned by the Law family. There's no way nobody told her CEO Law was already married when she kept calling him future grandson-in-law. Exactly. Didn't Dr. Harlan already cure her? Using her weak heart as an excuse is just enabling this inappropriate relationship to keep escalating. Chapter 23. Martin Law desperately signaled at me with his eyes, hoping I would help explain things to his grandmother before she became too enraged. I remained completely unmoved. What a joke. Grandma Law had held the entire family together through 3 rises and 3 falls of the Law family empire. Only Martin would actually believe Brenda's nonsense about an elderly woman being unable to handle emotional shock and keep backing down step by step. Brenda looked utterly miserable. It's my fault. I couldn't stop Grandma. She found out I was fired from the company and assumed CEO Law had done something unfair to me. She was so worried that she insisted on coming here. Brenda's grandmother clutched her chest tightly before slowly collapsing onto the floor. Brenda panicked instantly. CEO Law. Grandma's heart condition is acting up again. Just as Martin stepped forward, the old woman's branch-like hand grabbed him tightly. My life has been miserable from beginning to end. The only family I have is this granddaughter. If something happens to me today, promise me you'll take care of her for the rest of her life. Grandma Law's face turned ice cold. Tears shimmered in Brenda's eyes, but beneath them was unmistakable delight. She believed Martin was the type of man who treated promises seriously. Once he agreed, then regardless of whether her grandmother lived or died, he would definitely keep his word. I casually waved my hand. An entire team of family doctors immediately walked out in orderly succession. The expression on Brenda's grandmother's face changed. Why are there doctors at home too? I smiled faintly. Grandma's health isn't good. If I don't arrange for a professional medical team to remain on standby 24 hours a day, I can't feel at ease. Grandma Law continued coldly. What's laughable is that my granddaughter-in-law is more thoughtful and caring than my own grandson. My grandson is busy taking care of somebody else's grandmother, while she's the only one still worried about me. Martin's face alternated between red and pale. Grandma. I was negligent. Chapter 24. Very quickly, the doctors completed their examination of Brenda's grandmother. There was nothing seriously wrong with her. Realizing the situation had turned against her, the old woman suddenly started slapping her thighs and stomping her feet, refusing to get up from the floor no matter what. She looked exactly like one of those unreasonable elderly women from rural villages who rolled around on the ground throwing tantrums. I watched coldly. That's enough. Stop pretending to be confused. And stop pretending to be sick too. You already knew Martin was married. You wanted to force me out so your granddaughter could take my place. Nonsense. I unlocked my phone and displayed a series of screenshots. A while ago, I went to the hospital to pick up medicine. You added me on WeChat under the excuse of asking for directions, then posted social media updates for me to see every single day. Despite being over 60 years old, the old woman was surprisingly skilled with smartphones. If Brenda had not taught her, I absolutely would not believe it. Every post had been visible only to me. There were photos of Martin taking the grandmother and granddaughter to high-end Western restaurants. Photos of them golfing together. Romantic fireworks by the sea. There was even a photo of all 3 of them boarding my private yacht together for a fishing trip to avoid leaving evidence behind. Every post had been deleted within 24 hours. Martin's face turned deathly pale. Elisa, you misunderstood. A while ago, Brenda's grandmother nearly received a critical condition notice from the hospital. Brenda begged that if her grandmother woke up, we should accompany her in doing 100 things she had never experienced before. Grandma kept looking at me, hoping Brenda and I would accompany her together. I pitied her situation, so I agreed. The bullet comments exploded in fury. We got tricked. Brenda's grandmother's acting skills are incredible. She pretended to be a pitiful old rural woman who only cared about her granddaughter. I honestly sympathized with her before, just like the male lead did. Who would have thought she secretly added the wife on social media just to show off in front of her? She clearly had malicious intentions. The world really has gone downhill. It's not that old people naturally become bad people simply grow old. I continued throwing out even more explosive evidence. Brenda's father had been a local thug, coveting Brenda's mother's beauty. He forcibly assaulted her and married her against her will. After he grew tired of her, he developed a gambling addiction to repay his debts. He repeatedly forced his wife to sleep with different men. Later, Brenda's father got drunk one night and drowned after falling into a fish pond. Brenda's grandmother cursed Brenda's mother as a jinx and a shameless slut. She sold her off into the mountains to bear children for an old man, then falsely accused her of willingly seducing men. Brenda had known all of this, but her grandmother told her that having one disgraced person in the family was already enough. So she brought Brenda back to her maternal hometown village. Every day, the old woman would sit at the village entrance cracking sunflower seeds while constantly criticizing her daughter-in-law, trying to whitewash her own son's crimes. Brenda herself also considered her biological mother dirty. Since her grandmother treated her well, she willingly cooperated in preserving her father's reputation and packaged herself as a pitiful little girl. The bullet comments were so furious they nearly lost the ability to speak. How could this happen? Has the female lead's entire character setting collapsed? I don't think it collapsed at all. A female lead with strong morals would never knowingly get close to a married man without understanding boundaries. Chapter 25. Brenda cried as tears streamed down her face. Miss Elisa, I know you hate me, but that doesn't mean you should throw dirt on my name. You still refuse to call me Mrs. Law. Deep down, you've wanted to replace me for a long time already. I could not be bothered wasting words with her. Instead, I had someone bring in a thin, frail woman whose eyes were filled with fear. Her appearance resembled Brenda by nearly 50%. Brenda's grandmother trembled violently and pointed at the woman as though she had seen a ghost. Why you? How are you here? I stood protectively in front of the trembling woman. Brenda, after all these years, you don't even recognize your own mother anymore? My family had always maintained programs to support impoverished children and women in remote mountain regions. By chance, I learned that some women hidden deep in the mountains had actually been bought and trafficked there. Unable to bear it, I allocated part of our funds to hire professionals and cooperate with local police, successfully rescuing many women. Brenda's mother was among them. After not seeing each other for so many years, there was not a trace of joy on Brenda's mother's face. She looked at her daughter with heartbreak and nearly lost her balance. Back then, you clearly knew your grandmother sold me away, yet you still helped her count the money. You're truly heartless. Brenda nearly lost control of her emotions. Whose fault was it for sleeping with other men and making me get mocked by classmates my entire childhood? Slap. I struck her hard across the face. If it weren't for your sake, your mother would have escaped that family long ago. She was just useless. Unlike your mother, she couldn't give me a better life. The bullet comments erupted with unprecedented rage. Ah! That disgusting female lead can go die. Someone who doesn't even care about her own mother has no right to be in a sweet, romantic relationship. This is ridiculous. The so-called vicious side character has done so many good things. Yet just because she isn't the protagonist, the original novel gave her such a miserable ending. I want to mail razor blades to the original author. One box isn't enough. I need a dozen. Chapter 26. I hired the best lawyers and handled two major matters. First, I arranged proper care for Brenda's mother and sent Brenda's grandmother to prison. Second, I drafted the divorce agreement and finalized the division of assets. When Grandma Law learned that I was divorcing Martin, she did not try to stop me. She merely sighed deeply. The Law family simply lacks the fortune to keep you. Martin hurriedly tried to defend himself. I didn't know Brenda was that kind of person. I already kicked her out of the villa. There truly was nothing between us. In his mind, as long as no physical relationship happened, then everything remained honorable and innocent. Martin held me tightly in his arms, his eyes reddening. Elisa, I really didn't cheat on you. Please believe me. You didn't physically cheat. Your heart only wandered for a moment. But the moment you told your first lie and had Taylor cover for you, I already understood. A marriage without honesty means the relationship is already broken. Oh, right. Taylor's company recently fell into a financial crisis and asked my father for help. I rejected him. If his company can't recover, then don't blame my family for swallowing it whole. Partners in crime had to pay the price. I did not spare Brenda either. Through lawyers, I reclaimed every single cent Martin had spent on her. She cried pitifully in front of Martin, accusing me of being heartless while debt collectors aggressively came after her. Martin remained unmoved. If it weren't for you, my wife and I would never have ended up like this. To repay the money, Brenda worked 4 or 5 jobs a day. Eventually, she could no longer endure it and became the mistress of a greasy older man. After the man's wife hired people to beat her badly, Brenda became terrified and hurriedly followed a gangster involved in the underworld. In the end, she was trafficked to Myanmar. While trying to escape, she lost her life in a massive fire. Chapter 27. By the time I was over 4 months pregnant, my stomach could no longer be hidden. Martin still stubbornly refused to divorce. Elisa, you wouldn't want our baby to be born into a single-parent family, right? I pulled out a medical report. I think the baby would want even less to have a father who nearly killed him. Do you remember the time you pushed me over? I almost miscarried, but because you were worried something might happen to Brenda's grandmother, you ran off without even looking back. If I had arrived at the hospital 20 minutes later, the baby wouldn't have survived. What's laughable is that I was hospitalized for an entire week, and you never even knew. Martin's face turned deathly pale. During that period, I felt like I'd been put under some kind of spell. I really know I was wrong now. Can't we start over? No, there was no turning back in life. You knew I hated other people sitting in the passenger seat, yet you let Brenda sit there. You knew I disliked strangers entering our home, yet you allowed Brenda to come deliver honey. And then there was my yacht, your villa, and countless other incidents. You simply relied on the fact that I loved you. You took advantage of my feelings and convinced yourself that as long as you maintained so-called boundaries, you could keep indulging her behavior. But the scariest thing was that for her sake, you lied to me over and over again and destroyed every promise you ever made. Lies were like driftwood. Sooner or later, they would always wash ashore. Martin desperately tried to repent. I'm sorry, Elisa. At first, I truly only pitied her. I genuinely didn't know the grandmother and granddaughter were secretly provoking you behind my back. I no longer wanted to listen. Once love disappeared, everything he said sounded like an excuse. Chapter 28. In the end, Grandma Law was the one who truly stepped in. Using the authority of the entire family, she pressured Martin into giving me a proper and dignified divorce. Elisa, I failed to teach my grandson well. In the future, I'll entrust my great-grandchild to you. After dedicating her entire life to the Law family, the old woman remained remarkably clear-headed. All of my premarital assets stayed mine, while I received the majority of our shared marital profits. As for the joint business projects between our two families, the Law family would gradually withdraw over the next 3 years. Martin did not even bother reading the agreement before signing it directly. He looked absent-minded, as though he had completely lost his anchor in life. Yet the way he looked at me remained filled with attachment and lingering affection. As we left the Civil Affairs Bureau, he asked in a hoarse voice, "When the child is born, can I come see him?" There's no need. Don't come. Chapter 29. In the end, Martin broke his promise. 1 month before my due date, he hired a top-tier medical team to remain on standby at all times. But I had been cared for extremely well at my parents' home and never needed his help at all. My mother held the soft little bundle in her arms. Our precious grandson Isaac really looks like someone from our family. Martin stood outside the room, greedily staring at everything. He regretted it now. If he had not lost himself during the marriage, we should have been a happy family of 3. Grandma Law passed away 2 months before Isaac was born. In her will, she stated that regardless of whether the child was a boy or girl, half of her personal fortune would belong to the baby. Isaac grew quickly. He inherited my appearance, but his personality resembled Grandma Law's even more: steady, calm, and reserved. He was extremely intelligent. By kindergarten age, he already knew who Martin was. However, unlike other children, Isaac never cried or demanded to have a father around. I could not help feeling curious. Like a tiny adult, he answered seriously, "Mommy, Grandpa and Grandma are all very kind, but none of you ever let him come home. That means he must have done something wrong. How about I find you a new daddy? As long as Mommy is happy, anything is okay with me." When Isaac turned 7, I remarried. My new husband was a wealthy bachelor from a perfectly matched background. He had returned from overseas, always kept his word, and hated messy romantic entanglements more than anything. He treated both Isaac and my parents extremely well too. On the day of the wedding, Martin did not come. I heard he had become heavily dependent on alcohol and was currently undergoing treatment for mid-stage stomach cancer. I received a gift. When I opened it, I froze. Inside was an expensive and exquisitely crafted rose brooch. Wasn't this the exact gift Martin gave Brenda in the original storyline, the one that made me so furious I miscarried? It was worth $8 million. Selling it and donating the money to help others sounded much more meaningful. I could not help sighing a little. The bullet comments had long since disappeared, perhaps because I valued my life too much to keep obsessing over a man. The entire storyline had changed. At that moment, I deeply understood one thing. Even if fate hands you the worst possible script in the world, you still have to fight with everything you have and become the best actor in your own life. Only then could you truly rewrite destiny.